Welcome to the Toastmasters Experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to another episode of the Toastmasters Experience. I'm excited and delighted to have virtually on my show today, Nelu. Nelu, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Evelyn. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Now we're going to start at the very beginning. What clubs are you currently in, and what motivated you to join Toastmasters?
I'm currently a member of Stage Time, and I've been a long-term member at Wattle Grove, which I recently left, and I recently joined Revesby Toastmasters. And as to what motivated me to join Toastmasters, it is a long story, but in the interest of time and not losing context, I'll try to keep it brief. I've had a colorful life, and there are so many things that I thought perhaps I may never be able to speak about. But Toastmasters is a platform where people share their stories, and it has also given me an opportunity to share mine. It has been like therapy for me for the most part. I like to think that there's great courage and strength in being able to share your stories, and there's great humility and learning in listening to others' stories.
Wow, I love that answer. Now, you're going to have to share some of those stories. Gosh, oh my God. Okay, so I find that as well. I find Toastmasters can be a bit of a therapy session, like after, after meetings, like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that. But there is, like you were sharing, humility in listening and in telling that as well. Actually, let's start also at how long have you been a Toastmasters, or when did you decide that you wanted to join?
When I first joined Toastmasters, I think it was back in 2011, and I was in Toastmasters for a couple of years, and then life got in the way. I was doing two jobs, had two kids, and I thought and I was also doing part-time studies. I thought it's too much. I need to give something up, and I gave up Toastmasters. And after a while, it took me a lot of courage to come back to it. So at the time, why I joined Toastmasters was I was going through postnatal depression after my kids, and the doctors asked me to take prescribed drugs, and I thought, no, I'm going to try an alternative way. The alternative path was to so much exercise so that I can have endorphins in my body, and secondly, meditate, and thirdly, find people to share my story with. And that's what motivated me to join Toastmasters.
You joined Toastmasters to talk about your postnatal depression? Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I did, because often I was met with these two schools of thought in the society. Once you hit that spot, you realize that society can be brutal and judgmental. Some of those people never believed in depression, and I was able to go as a test speaker to a lot of other clubs and talk about depression. And I had all kinds of different views from people. And then I also had a realization it's the ignorance that make a person foolish. If you haven't experienced something, you jump into conclusion and you think what you think is right. So in a way, I was able to, and there were in the plus side, there were so many people who came to me and shared their stories. So I felt like it was such a privilege for me to be able to be that change factor to some degree, and to be able to shift people's perspective if they were on the fence thinking this is all a controversy and there's nothing called depression. As a kid, I used to be so shy, and I was actually debilitated by my shyness. I used to be a participant in an orchestra, and every time I had to get on the stage and perform in the orchestra, I used to feel sick for days, knowing that people are watching me. I knew I had had this debilitating shyness, but I never took any steps to go out there and do something about it. I guess I didn't know about Toastmasters. I didn't have many opportunities back in Sri Lanka. But after coming here, when I was going through that difficult period in my life, I thought if I'm not going to try something different now, I might never be able to try this. So I just wanted to put myself out in the deep end and try and learn to swim.
Wow, wow. So really your shyness and going through the postnatal depression, that's what motivated you to join Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I mean, I have spoken to lots of different people throughout the Toastmasters experience, like why they joined. So, I think you're one of the first who's joined because of that reason. So I think that's great. Excellent. Actually, a lot of people do join because they are quite terrified of public speaking. So it sounds like this shyness was something that took over your life.
Yes. And I think a lot of people don't realize, I've seen this in many kids, including mine when they were younger, that they have so much potential, but they just don't know what's stopping them. And 90% of the time, what's stopping them is their inability to express. So inability to express something is because of shyness. But it takes a while for people to figure this out. And it took me a while to figure it out as well.
It obviously has helped because I mean, I've known you for, the short while in stage time, and I don't think you're shy at all. So,
I'm still an introvert, Evelyn,
mhm.
but but I've learned to build up courage and build myself up to that, have that moment on the stage to be an extrovert. After I come off the stage, I'm back to my introvert self. But I'm building that transition from being an introvert to extrovert when I want to be. And I think being able to do that and switch between those two personalities has incredibly helped me in both personal and professional life.
Now you've got to share with me. So I don't know if you can remember this, but the very first time you delivered a speech at Toastmasters, what was that experience like, and what did you talk about, if you can remember?
I do remember, in fact, um, I've never had a stroke so far,
Mhm.
but I've read what do people feel like when they suffer from a stroke. Perspiration, face numbing, lifeless. I experienced all of those. I even contemplated faking a stomach ache and fleeing the moment. But I thought I had to be brave. I built up courage, gave my icebreaker. Honestly, sometimes we all tend to make a storm in a teacup. And then in hindsight, we realize it wasn't as bad as what it seemed. So it wasn't that bad, and it can only get better.
That's right. We do build ourselves up that it's going to be so bad. We're going to throw up. We're going to faint. I hope we're not turning people off of Toastmasters by hearing those stories. But I think that actually is a good thing to point out is we as an audience don't see the nervousness. Like we're feeling like we're going to pass out, throw up, or we're sweating. But the audience doesn't see that. So I think
Yeah, that's right.
that's an important thing to say to people who are listening to this podcast and who aren't in Toastmasters, thinking, "Oh no, I don't want to go through that." But we don't as an audience we don't actually see that. So you obviously threw yourself into the deep end by
Yeah.
giving these speeches. How has Toastmasters helped you then? It must have helped you in your personal and professional life. Let's first start with your personal life. How has it helped you in your personal life?
Well, personal life, I take my role as a mother very seriously. So my kids are the most precious assets in my life. And to be able to teach them things that I have learned from Toastmasters to be able to speak when it matters, to voice their opinion. I think that that's a huge, huge perk as a member of Toastmasters to be able to learn that and be able to pass that on. And with my husband, I'm a straight shooter. I don't always bring in diplomacy when I'm talking, having an honest conversation. But over the years, I found that, words have a lot of power. Sometimes you need to bring in diplomacy, even with the people who are closest to you, to soften the edges, make it a little bit colorful and beautiful in the way that you communicate. And the effects are compounding. That's my personal life.
Mhm.
And thirdly, as there's something I really want to note, that is Toastmasters has given me the incredible opportunity to make lifelong friends. And I have some amazing friends who are
Mhm.
quite inspiring. And they've been the tailwind behind my journey in Toastmasters. So I just want to acknowledge them as well.
Mhm.
Professionally, I've learned to uh, deal with rough situations where my words need to not to be so crude, and I've learned to handle difficult situations as a result of being in Toastmasters.
Okay. And do you use the sandwich method?
I try my best to use the sandwich method, and
Okay.
I carefully choose my words.
Mm.
For an example, in a performance review meeting, you don't say, I'm offering you constructive criticism. You say, I'm offering you constructive feedback. That those small changes, I think they make a big impact on the person who's at the receiving end.
I mean, one thing I have noticed is that when we do evaluations, like you're extremely thoughtful in what you say. Now, is there some sort of advice that you could give the people, give the audience who's listening right now, how you do your evaluations?
Sure, Evelyn. So I think in Toastmasters there are three types of speeches that one who would hope that they would give. The first one, the one that they actually prepare. Second one, the one that they actually deliver. Third one, the one that people in the audience receive. Now, those three are very different often, and the speech that you have written down is most of the time not what you deliver. At least I'm speaking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you deliver, often those people who deliver know the mistakes that they do. I agree that there's probably 10% of the mistakes we don't often know unless someone points out. But that 10% shouldn't be the cause of not feeling great about yourself after you deliver a speech. So I'm really mindful that I need to let the person know that you need to improve on this, but at the same time, that shouldn't be a cause for them to not try again. So if you, when it, in the way that you evaluate a person, if you tell them, if you like to, because often evaluation is again a personal opinion. Your evaluation could be different from mine, or
Mm-hmm.
your opinion is different from mine. So there's a lot of subjectivity in the individualism and the way that you perceive something. So I believe if you offer them as a soft suggestion, there's more likelihood of that person taking those suggestions on board rather than saying, next time do this. So
Right.
that's just my.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've noticed from the time that I've known you, I guess it's maybe been maybe about 2 years since we've been in stage time together, that I have noticed that your evaluations, they're so much more kinder and softer, if that makes sense. But there's
Oh,
so
thank
much,
you.
yeah, no, but there's also so much insightfulness and wisdom in your evaluations as well. So that's why I was wondering if you could if you could share your secrets. So, but I mean, but seriously though, what is your sort of overall, like when you decide that you're going to evaluate someone, what is
Mhm.
your first sort of, what do you do? Do you actually just listen to the whole speech and write your notes, or what are things that you actually look for?
The first thing I would look for is, has the person done justice to the speech? And if the intent is there, if the effort was there, if that came through, if that is connected, if the message was connected and received by the audience well, I think that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
So everything else, those are little improvements that they can probably tweak to make their presentation better. But I often, the first things I look is, have they achieved the purpose? If they have achieved the purpose, I think the rest is, they're not, there are too many things to stress about or get really, really feel down about. So just have to be kind to the person, to be, so that they would be open for your suggestions in the first place. Because often people give evaluations in Toastmasters, and some people just don't want to take it on board because they think, oh, that person is wrong, which is fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
We are not like an AI machine who can evaluate everything 100%. But it's just your opinion. You're giving it to someone, so you just have to give it to the other person in a respectful and an approachable way.
Besides Toastmasters, are there any sort of podcasts that you listen to, any sort of like public speaking or self improvement resources that you listen to or read, or some that you can suggest right now?
I love reading books when I find time to do that. I really love the self-motivational type books.
Mm-hmm.
And one book that I read was that, why didn't someone tell me this before? And I need to find, I can't quite remember the author, it's been some time. And another book that I read was by Shelley Sandberg. She was a Meta executive. Her book is about leaning in. And International Women's Day is coming up, and if you have heard about the Lean In organization, it's a platform for women who are deprived to voice their opinion. And in her book, she says that women always hesitate to sit at the table, that they don't want to be a part of the decision making process,
Mm-hmm.
and they often, as a result, become a part of the menu. They're being taken advantage of. So in my life, I've experienced this, when you don't have a say in the decisions that's going to impact your life. You often become almost like a, it's like you become a something that can be consumed by others. You can be easily manipulated. So these are some of the books that I find inspiring, and I find that there's a lot of messages if we can implement them in our lives.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, that's great. So I'll have to find that other book. Why didn't someone tell me? Is that correct for the first book that you were saying as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was things that no one told me before. That's the
Okay.
correct
Okay. No, I'll try to find, I'll put that in the show notes too, who the author is, if anybody who's listening would like to, find that particular book, because they both sound quite interesting. So how do you stay motivated to continue to improve your public speaking?
To be fair, Evelyn, I'm not sure whether I have given enough effort in Toastmasters. Because Toastmasters has been an ancillary part of my life, along with my family, who take precedence over everything. And then there's work, and there's my extended family who are still in Sri Lanka. So Toastmasters is I'm not sure whether I have committed enough to Toastmasters,
Hmm.
but every time I go to a meeting, I come out so inspired by listening to other people's stories and the way they've conducted themselves or something extraordinary that they have done in the meeting. And I try to remember how I felt at the moment because often what you say to the audience, it just dissipates over time, but you won't forget how you felt at the moment. So when it comes to the next time for me to go to a meeting and when I have thousand excuses to not turn up, I try to remember how I felt in the last meeting, and that often is gives me a motivation to turn up at the next meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for that really honest answer. Because, life does get in the way. And some years in Toastmasters are amazing, and some are just like a bit, no, I don't feel like going. But you still learn. You still learn when you end up going, and you learn from listening to others or having those smaller roles. So it's not that joining Toastmasters is like a lifelong, and we know this. We've been members for quite a long time. It's like a lifelong journey, and just like life, some chapters are up and some chapters are down. So thank you for that. Very
You said it so well, Evelyn.
previously, you said you've been in Australia for how long? Can you just share that journey, like how you moved from Sri Lanka to Australia?
I was born in Sri Lanka and I've been privileged to have a great education and have had amazing parents. But there was a war in Sri Lanka for nearly 30 years, and I've been a part of 20 years of that war. I was born during the time of the war, and I left the country during the time of the war. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I got into the law faculty with my HSC marks, but my mom said, if you're going to do law, you're going to get shot. So you
Oh.
need to leave. Because I often speak about injustice. And then I got a scholarship to go overseas and I went overseas and I came back and then I met my beautiful husband. We got married, but because of our cultural differences, again, it was very difficult to live
Mhm.
where we called home. So we had to quickly use the qualifications that we have gained so far and try and find a different home. So Australia was our second home.
So your husband, he's from Sri Lanka as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And you said you have what, two children? Is that correct?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. Okay. And and I know being a mother is one of the most rewarding and challenging jobs ever. So and you said you incorporate some of your Toastmaster skills into being a mother. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I've learned earlier on that one of them are going to turn out to be like me, and I was correct. My daughter is an incredibly shy kid. I noticed this when she was about 4 years old, where she was trying to shy away from attempting things. And I thought, there you go. I noticed that trait. I noticed that characteristic where she was trying to hide away from the society. And it was the insights that I gained from Toastmasters that I used to encourage her to come out of that shell. And both my children, to their credit, have turned out to be all right, and they don't quite shy away to the degree that I did as a child from expressing their opinion. And I think that's a great triumph in my life.
So in saying all this, what does communication mean to you?
Communication is using the correct language to encode your message and ensure that it's decoded at the other end in the same intent that you encoded your message. So often we want to say something, but we don't quite use the correct words, or we don't quite use the correct expressions. And as a result, our message get distorted and the receiver understand it differently. And that's a huge barrier in communication. And if you can communicate your intent and be received at the other end at the same intent that you meant to, I think that you've achieved your purpose in communication.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things when we communicate that are quiet. Like sometimes I've noticed a really well timed pause can be a part of that communication, a part of that sort of message that they're delivering.
Absolutely. I think pauses are really important, and I didn't know till this I joined Toastmasters that pauses offers the audience to reflect on what you've just said, absorb what you've just said, and also it gives that opportunity to show the emphasis that you want to put on that message.
Mm.
So yeah, absolutely. Pauses are a great feature in effective communication.
Can you just share with me what you do? What do you do as a job and how you use Toastmasters in your job?
I've done a few jobs. I took a career break after my kids were born, and then I realized the train has certainly left the platform. I'm far behind. I needed to quickly
Hmm.
upskill myself, and I moved from being a corporate banker to a financial advisor, and now I'm in financial advice and superannuation, but I'm not in practice. I've moved on to legislation.
Hmm.
So when the government put out uh, legislations, they often release a draft legislation. And my job is to go in there and figure out what what part of the policies which are not going to be beneficial for the profession of accounting in Australia,
Mm.
and what part of the policies are not going to be beneficial for the public good, and try and persuade the government, the policymakers, the ministers to have a better design of those policies to benefit the greater public.
Mm. Okay. Wow. Okay. So, so, um, so you probably don't use your Toastmaster skills for that, do you? Unless you're explaining that to somebody.
Sorry, I forgot the second part of the
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Yes. I do use the Toastmaster skill because
Hmm.
part of this persuading government to change their position is
Mm.
to often meet with them and have roundtable discussions with Treasury and the government ministerial officers. And to be able to persuade them, you have to use the correct language.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if you don't have the correct language, if you don't have the correct words, if you can't quite point out a win-win situation, they're never going to come to the table to agree to change anything. So Toastmasters has immensely helped me to negotiate, uh, to achieve a win-win position in these meetings.
Yeah. Oh no, that's fantastic. So I mean, Toastmasters helps subtly, like in that situation and in my job and but so from all the people I've spoken to, there's just so many things that Toastmasters can benefit in your professional, personal, in your life. So it's just such a great organization to join. Can you share a memorable moment or achievement that you've had in Toastmasters?
Yes, Evelyn. Honestly, I don't have many accolades. I don't have a lot of trophies. I've just won a few club competitions and one area competition, but they are not what I'm proud about in Toastmasters. What I'm most proud about are the moments that I'm able to help someone who was used to be my younger self. And one day I remember a girl walked through this through the doors into our club. And she was in the first year of uni. She was immigrant from Vietnam, but she spoke well. However, I felt like she just wanted to disappear. She just didn't want to be seen. And I sat next to her because I identified that she needed support. And I sat next to her. And I was so sure if she went home after that meeting, she would never turn back and then wouldn't come back to Toastmasters ever again. And she would probably continue to live her life not to her full potential because of that shyness. So I sat next to her and I told her my story and how I developed and progressed as a result of coming to Toastmasters. And you may not have, like you mentioned earlier during the podcast, it's like you may not have all the good chapters. You may have days that you don't feel good. You may have days that you feel extremely happy in the way that you progressed. But part of progressing in Toastmasters is also turning up to many meetings as possible, and then just figuring out what you're going to do. So after I met this girl, I explained how it all works. There's no quick shortcuts. It's about, it's take the long, hard road, and there are great benefits at the end. And then I recently met her at a division contest in the audience. I could barely recognize her because she was so confident. She was so poised. She approached me and she asked me, "Do you remember me? I'm that girl." Then I thought, wow, she has certainly become this swan. She was beautiful. And she told me the story that I was right, that she would have never come back. So I thought at that moment, those little moments of impact that you're able to make in other people's lives are the ones that kind of define your life at the end.
I love that. That is such a great story, but it's so true. And there's so many stories like that within Toastmasters that, they're so shy and they come in and, like you're right, they develop into this beautiful swan and someone who wins all the competitions at the end of a few years, of them going. It's sort of the catalyst. Toastmasters is the catalyst that they needed. And maybe sitting next to someone like you or their mentor really did push them, not really push them because we don't push them. It's sort of a supportive sort of nudge, that helps people to become better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. So, gosh, it's been such a pleasure, Nelu, having you on the show today. But I want to ask one last question. What advice would you give someone considering joining Toastmasters?
The advice that I would give to someone who's considering joining Toastmasters is there's great strength in being heard, being seen, and being believed. So if you're struggling in a place that you feel like people are never going to see me, people are never going to hear me, people are never going to believe me, join Toastmasters. Take that first step. It only gets easier from there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much again. I'm so grateful to have you on my show. Thank you so much.
Likewise, pleasure is all mine. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.
Is it finished?